Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today as you develop the record on an issue that I think is extraordinarily timely for our nation, and that is the issue of energy exports. And today, my comments will focus specifically on the export of oil, of crude. Again, I appreciate the invitation to kind of walk across the lawn here and share my perspective. I think it's fitting for both our chambers to be working together on issues, particularly issues such as energy exports that are so important to our nation and increasingly the world. I noted to you, Mr. Chairman, that in the Energy Committee we held a hearing on this issue several weeks ago. It was the first time in 25 years that there has been a hearing in the United States Senate on the issue of oil export. And put that into perspective, we haven't had the opportunity to talk about it because we have been evaluating our energy portfolio truly from one of scarcity rather than one of abundance, and how the landscape has changed. So this debate, this dialogue that you are beginning here in your committee is greatly appreciated and, again, very, very timely. Let there be no mistake that today's issue, the ban on crude oil exports, is truly one in the national interest. In an area of debt and deficits, the North American energy renaissance presents us with an opportunity to strengthen our position and resolve on the global stage while generating wealth, creating jobs, reducing our deficits, and enhancing our national security. Lifting the ban will boost U.S. production and open our nation to global markets. The American consumer, the American people, are the ones that will ultimately benefit. And I appreciate Mr. Vargas's comment on the sensitivity to price. I come from a state, while we are producers, we also face some of the highest energy costs to consumers in the country. I have no interest in doing anything that will increase the price that Alaskans and others around the country pay. So I have been looking at this issue very, very critically. Existing regulations provide us some possibilities here. For example, a swap program with Canada was instituted by the Ford administration, continued by President Carter, and carried through to completion by President Reagan. There's been some discussion about similar opportunities with Mexico. That's something that I could support, but I think we have recognized that it is a somewhat cumbersome vehicle. So how would you deal with that? Last month, I proposed a roadmap for the way forward. I introduced a white paper on the broader issue of energy exports, but outlined in that white paper, as well as a speech to CERAWeek, how I think we might be able to advance. First, I believe that the Commerce Department retains the authority to modernize its regulations and update its 30-year definition of crude oil in such a way as to facilitate the export of condensate. Commerce has taken similar measures in the past. My committee staff has sketched out a report released earlier this week, and I would like to be able to provide that to the committee, if I may. Among the many examples, let me highlight a couple here. During the era of price and allocation controls, California started to shut in production for a variety of competitive and regulatory reasons. Commerce authorized a temporary export program of residual fuel oil to protect the production. So when you've got an oversupply of butane, a glut was effectively created in the Gulf Coast, additional exports were authorized by Commerce. So we do have in place existing authorities. Now, I have asked the Energy Information Administration, the EIA, to conduct an ongoing dynamic analysis of the crude oil export situation. What I don't want to see is a standalone, static study that would be out of date by the time that it is published. I suggested in my speech in Houston that this might be the year of the reports. 2014 would be the year that we do this assessment, the analysis, the real in-depth, get an in-depth understanding as to where we are with oil exports. Finally, Mr. Chairman, the President retains the authority to approve limited crude oil exports. We know this because presidents from both parties have done so in the past. Now, one objection I have heard is that this approach cedes too much authority to the President. How, it is asked, can one both criticize the administration for misusing executive power in some areas, but ask it to take action here? The answer is pretty simple. The answer is that Congress has already given explicit authority to the President to address oil exports for the national interest. So at the end of the day, I am prepared to introduce legislation if necessary, but because legislation takes time that we may not need to spend, I'm hopeful that we may have a willing partner within the administration. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have exceeded my time. I do have, again, information that my staff on the Energy Committee has gone into great detail in laying out what we think might be a reasonable path forward. It also outlines the authorities that are currently in law for the administration. But I do think it is part of the initial discussion as we take on this very important and very timely issue.
Thank you, Senator. And we'll make the information you give the subcommittee a part of the record.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.